Two sets of visuals taken thousands of kilometers apart and a year apart. One in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil 2025, the other is in New Delhi, India 2026. Prime Minister Modi meeting with BRICS national security advisors. At first glance, they seem unrelated, but together they tell the story of a changing world. A world where India is increasingly comfortable standing shoulder to shoulder with countries that Washington does not always approve of. During the 2025 BRICS leaders meeting in Brazil, US President Donald Trump had openly attacked the grouping, threatening tariffs, warning countries against challenging the dollar, accusing the bloc of undermining American interests. Yet, instead of backing away, BRICS is expanding, and India is chairing the grouping in 2026. So what exactly happened at the BRICS NSA meeting in New Delhi? Why is the bloc becoming more important, and why does India see value in a grouping that increasingly irritates Trump and Washington? This week, New Delhi hosted the 16th BRICS National Security Advisors meeting. Led by NSA Ajit Doval, the gathering brought together security chiefs and senior officials from across the BRICS universe. And the agenda reflected the anxieties of today's world. Not just terrorism, but cyber warfare, artificial intelligence, critical infrastructure attacks, food security, energy security, and the weaponization of emerging technologies. Officials discussed threats that increasingly transcend borders and cannot be tackled by any one country alone. Particular attention was paid to counter-terrorism cooperation, information sharing, law enforcement coordination, and preventing terrorist groups from exploiting new technologies. The message was clear. BRICS is no longer just talking economics. It is becoming a platform for security coordination in a world where traditional institutions appear weaker than ever. And that is important because from Ukraine to West Asia, from cyber attacks to drone warfare, security concerns now dominate global politics. The meeting of the National Security Advisors is a precursor to the 2026 BRICS Summit, which will be hosted by India in September this year. The attendance of the Chinese leader Xi Jinping and the Russian President Vladimir Putin has been confirmed. It's almost certain that leaders of the other countries, including President Lula of Brazil, will be in India to attend the BRICS Summit. This itself is a clear indication that the world order, which was dominated for more than 3 decades by the United States and its allies after the collapse of the Soviet Union, has changed fundamentally and changed completely and irreversibly. Back in 2001, when BRICS was launched, the powerful G7 countries of the world accounted for 65% of the global GDP. The BRICS nations, in contrast, were much smaller economies and really had no say in running global affairs. Today, the G7 countries' share of global GDP has shrunk to 28%, and it is the BRICS grouping that contributes 40% of the global GDP. In fact, if you look at purchasing power parity, then the BRICS grouping has the largest and the third largest economies of the world, China and India. From just 5 nations in the early 2000s, the BRICS grouping has now expanded to 11 member states, including Egypt, Ethiopia, Indonesia, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and of course Iran. The United States, of course, remains a military and economic superpower. It still dictates terms. Dollar remains the global reserve currency. American financial institutions continue to dominate the world, but the monopoly is gone, and there is a difference between monopoly and dominance. In 2025, during the BRICS Leaders Summit in Brazil, Donald Trump, in his typical style, had thrown a tantrum. He declared the BRICS meeting to be anti-American. He said that it's a conspiracy to attack the dollar. He threatened to impose a 10% additional tariff on any country that follows the BRICS guidelines. He also imposed a 50% punitive tariff on Brazil for having the temerity to challenge the US dollar. Of course, President Lula of Brazil responded in a very, very sober but firm manner. Calling out Trump, he declared the world did not need any emperor. For many, Donald Trump at that point of time looked like an emperor without clothes. The Iran conflict and its aftermath has clearly demonstrated that the USA is indeed an emperor without clothes at the global stage. Powerful, yes, but it is helpless when it comes to imposing its will on any country. It rained missiles and bombs for weeks and weeks on Iran. It claimed to have completely destroyed the Iranian military. It claimed to have decimated Iran, and yet Iran is standing strong. In fact, even the National Security Advisor of Iran was there in Delhi to attend the BRICS meeting, which concluded just yesterday. So what's in it for India, and what's the message that India is trying to send to Trump via BRICS? Why is India investing so much diplomatic capital in the BRICS? The answer is simple: strategic flexibility. India does not want to choose between Washington and Moscow, between Quad and BRICS, between the West and the Global South. It wants relationships with all of them. That has been the defining feature of India's foreign policy in the recent past. Multi-alignment, not non-alignment, multi-alignment. India works with the United States in the Indo-Pacific, buys weapons from Russia, trades heavily with Europe, competes with China, and sits with China inside BRICS. That balancing act gives New Delhi leverage, and it also gives India influence, which is why Trump's criticism of BRICS may actually strengthen the resolve of many member states, because the more pressure Washington applies, the more attractive alternative forums can become. For India, BRICS is not about opposing America. It is about ensuring that India has a seat at every important table. And in a world fractured by wars, economic rivalry, geopolitical uncertainty, that may be the smartest strategy of all. The BRICS meeting in Rio angered Trump. The BRICS Security Summit in New Delhi reinforced the same message. The grouping is not disappearing, it is expanding, and India intends to be at the center of it. Because in the emerging multipolar world, New Delhi does not want to pick a side, it wants to shape the game. This is Times Access, where global stories meet India's perspective. Click on the bell icon to subscribe, because the next big global shift will have India at its center.